Morrison.
Bring us here to see Salvador Dali.
When we were 3 and 4. A couple of years apart.
So we're supposed to actually start just like talking, like we care. Can we just have questions? We'd love to just talk to you guys and not actually have to talk to each other. It's like Lennon and McCartney and Morrison and Marr, we don't go on anymore.
Little and large.
You know, little and large, big and small, Tom and Jerry, Baskin and Robbins. I can go on all night. Somebody ask a question. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys have done what's arguably the best single issue of the last 5 years with Pax Americana.
Yeah.
What's next from you two?
Well, we have to get beyond that. Everything we've done has been kind of, we've made a point of making it different. And right now,
excuse me a second.
No,
just because there was no mic there, this is about Pax Americana. On you go.
What?
It's just loads of people didn't hear what you said.
You just ruined my flow. No, so we're always trying to do something new. We have some ideas, but if we come back together, it has to be something brilliant.
Is it too early to talk about?
No, it's never too early. It's like probably 8:30.
You can't just say that and leave us hanging.
No.
To be honest.
Is it too early to talk about Big Crazy?
Well, I've got this thing, Big Crazy, which is about my dad's nickname in the war was Big Crazy. They sent him to Burma, and he was a socialist radical, and he had these amazing experiences in the war. And his take on the war is very different from everything we've ever heard. Because in history, like, we won the war, everything made sense. My father, when he was living the war, said we all thought Hitler might win. It might be the end of the world. It's like everyone was fucking, everyone was like fighting, everyone was living and dying in this time. So we're kind of trying to do something about that, but I've got a story which is about psychology and about the idea of big crazy, basically. And we might do that, but we might do something else. We just have to find, we've got to the point where we've done so many things that's so different, so definitive, I think, that we have to do something brilliant next. And yeah, it will happen. Just give us a minute.
That sounds like a lot of work for me.
Yeah, it's always a lot. Pax Americana, he hated it. Because I was doing this whole Alan Moore thing, and I'd layouts, I'd like...
He gave me a script like this thick.
Oh, it was like this. It was like Watchmen #1. And now we have to, I just want to hand it over to him, because he's the greatest artist in the world. Come on, cheer! So yeah, the next thing is going to be the best thing we've ever done.
No pressure.
Question number 2.
I've got a roving mic.
What?
A roving mic.
Hello. I think everyone in the crowd has their own favourite book you two have done.
Yeah.
But is there any book you can both agree is your best, or do you each have a different favourite?
My favourite is We Three. Honestly, I think we broke so many boundaries on that, and we devised a way of looking at the page, which was to treat the page as not a two-dimensional surface, but as a three-dimensional depth. So we could rotate panels, we could do things like that sequence where the cat's jumping through all the different kind of sidereally rotated panels. So for me, that was the one, and no one has picked up on that. No one's really taken those ideas of the 3D page space and developed them. So for me, that's the one. I think it might be different for you, but...
It's kind of the same for me, but there's a bit more to it. We Three is definitely my favourite from the point of view of trying to push it at the boundaries of what you can do with a comic book. Flex Mentallo has a particular place for me because it's very personal.
Well, Flex is very Scottish and it's a biographical thing, you know, but as I say, just on the technical level, I think what we did in We Three, no one's quite understood yet.
I agree with that. I think technically We Three is miles ahead of Flex, but at the same time I think Flex, although it's a much earlier work, and for me in particular it's a much more
and it was our first
naive work, there's more of us in it.
I love the echo here, I feel like Zeus. I feel like Zeus. Remember that guy, Scotty T? I'm like Zeus. You don't watch Geordie's show?
It's too highbrow a crowd to watch Geordie's show, stop it.
I wish I'd never said that.
No, but All-Star Superman as well. Although All-Star Superman was a much straighter, more direct kind of story and worked in comic terms, like storytelling wise, it worked in a much simpler way. It actually, I think it touched people in a way that a lot of...
I think it's more true, I think, because what we tried to do was do a folk tale, and it was like strip it all back, and there wasn't any fancy, flashy, apart from the Luther one, we did a little bit of kind of 3D stuff. But yeah, All-Star Superman was very classical. It was all about the kind of the Enlightenment, the classical idea of the hero, Pico della Mirandola. It was about classicism, it was about the Enlightenment, and I think I really love it because it's so flat and basic and simple, but it appeals to so many people. It will be remembered beyond anything we've ever done.
I think Superman, story-wise, is the thing that will last the longest. I think We Three, in terms of storytelling, comic-wise.
Yeah, but no one else can do it. No one else can do what he does. I've seen some things, a bit of Greg Capullo will try this, or someone will try a little bit of 3D page space, but no one's done it. But All-Star Superman, I think, will persist until we're long dead.
Here's hoping.
Question number 3. Thank you.
You're busy, mate.
Hi there. Are there any properties or books or characters out there that you think, I wish I came up with that?
Oh, come on, there's the Metal Men. I wish I thought of those guys. I wish I'd thought of Wolverine. But no, it's too late for that. The guy that thought Wolverine is dead, that Len Wein, he was my ultimate hero. He was my greatest inspiration in comics. And the boy died last week. So there's a lot of things I wish we'd done, but I think the things we've done are good enough that other people might wish they'd done them. Do you agree? Do you agree?
I agree completely. I wasn't paying attention,
No,
so I agree completely. I totally drifted off here, I'm sorry.
The first time I met him, right, we were doing Flex Mentallo, we met in 1993, and it was in this Equi Cafe, which used to be in Sucky Hall Street. And it was where all the bands used to meet, because the bands had played in the art school and nice and sleazy, so they all hung out in the Equi Cafe. But they had this waitress who had really bad eczema, and she would like scrape her eczema into the beans and toast. And so you knew
It was good.
No, but it was tasty. It was tasty eczema. You knew when you were eating the beans and toast that you were consuming the essence of another human being. But that's when we met, and we tried to talk about Flex Mentallo, and all we talked about was fine art, because Vin didn't know anything about superheroes. I went in with this big superhero story, and I said to him, like Billy Batson. He said, who the fuck is Billy Batson?
When he said, just draw a generic kid with a black and white
like Dennis the Menace,
Like Dennis the Menace.
So yeah, it's like we bonded over fine art, not over comics at all, because you weren't that into them, were you?
No, I didn't know much about comics. I had to keep phoning you up and asking what your references were, because I didn't understand any of it.
Come on.
There's
Vittorio.
do I need a thank you? Yeah. Oh, shit.
Alright, so when you've done Flex Mentallo, The Invisibles, and The Field, you kind of linked those works like in sort of a thematical way. Is there any other of your work that you feel they're sort of connected, even though they're three different stories?
I don't know, right now everything honestly is biographical. And I've always tried to be, I look at Batman Incorporated, it's like when my mum was dying, and Damien is dying, and it's like, my cat's dying, so yeah, everything is meaningful, everything has connections to something that happened. But, on this, what do you think? We all put our lives into what we do. And so all of it is, if you cannot write this stuff without being honest and putting your life into it. And it's what I always tell people who are writing comics. If you're writing Batman, put your romance into it, put your mother's death into it, be honest.
It's like when we were doing Flex, for me Flex was a really personal project, and it was all about my dad. My dad was, I'm like 5'8", and my dad was like nearly 6 foot, and he was a PE teacher, and I always felt in his shadow. And Grant's dad was like a big guy who'd been in the army, and then he joined CND, the campaign for
he was the ultimate mighty socialist who gave up his life for people, so that was my superhero.
So we both, I don't know if it's exactly the same thing for both of us, but we both had fathers who in some way were like much, much bigger than us. And
isn't that comics? Isn't that Superman? Isn't that...
That's everything. But for me, when I was working on Flex, and my dad had only died very recently when I was working on it, for me, Flex was really about my dad. And for Grant, when I talked to him about it, literally years later, it was actually about his dad, for him. So it is a kind of universal thing in the same way that All-Star Superman was a kind of universal thing. But for me at the time when I was working on it, not knowing anything or not knowing much about superheroes, it was very much, I got these scripts that I loved, that worked really well, and I thought he's a writer that I want to keep working with. I got these stories and I thought these kind of they work for me in a way that other stories don't, and I kind of, it felt like it was what Grant was writing was about me and my dad, but what Grant was actually writing was about him and his dad, so that's one of the many kind of
every one of our dads, it's just like
points of connection.
Can we make a story about all of our dads? Yeah, that's Superman. That's like our dad is Superman, our dad is Zeus, our dad is the god, and to turn that into metaphor or symbol is like be honest, and I always say to writers, young writers, be honest. Tell me a story about how you feel, tell me a story about your dad, your mum, your sister, and make it into a metaphor, make it into a symbol, make it into an epic crossover.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a Facebook Live question from Aileen, and she asks, when did you get into sci-fi? But I guess I would quantify that by saying, are you both into sci-fi?
No, my mother was into sci-fi, that was my thing. She had all these books, like The Man Who Fell to Earth, The Day It Rained Forever. These titles, it'd be, what the hell? But she controlled what I read, so it was like, you can't read that one. There was this story called The Annex, and I wasn't allowed to read it, because it was so awful. It was so sci-fi that I could not read it. But I never read that stuff. I wasn't into science fiction, I was into television and like, the Muppets. But I've ended up doing science fiction, so I've kind of followed my mum's diktat, you know. But I was never into science fiction. I hate science fiction. I hate people who write about the future. Isaac Asimov. I just love now, us here, like trying to explain things. It's not sci-fi, it's just trying to explain it through metaphor, trying to put it into symbols, trying to make a story out of how it feels to be this, you know? Bro, everyone here will not exist in 100 years' time. Think about that.
So, if you're not into sci-fi, how did you approach A Brave New World?
I read the thing and I love Huxley. I totally identified with that intellectual lunatic who Huxley, on his deathbed, he said 100 milligrams of LSD. The guy is dying, boom, intravenous, LSD as he's dying. How hard, how heavy metal, how cool is that guy? So that's how I approach that, you know, and Huxley wasn't science fiction, we're living it now. We have the feelies, we have augmented reality, we have mixed reality, we have virtual reality, we live in a world where, you know, like people are validated because of their fame. Huxley predicted all that. The one thing he didn't predict was AI. So our television version of Huxley has AI and it changes everything.
How you doing, guys?
Hey,
all right?
how you doing, man?
I consider myself to be a comics reader,
Right.
more than a fan, although I do enjoy comics. And when you started when I was reading through your Batman runs, I had to refer to the internet to try and make sense of things. I'm Freedom Barton, I consider you to be a neighbour, and I feel like you've disrespected
Totally,
me.
yeah.
And you've made it hard for me.
No, I haven't made
to
a
get
point
in.
of disrespecting you.
But you've made me put the work in,
No, of course.
and I enjoy that. But do you think it would
But
be
we
quite...
have the technology now. You can put the work in. You can look at.
Well, that's
Yeah.
my question
Yeah.
to you. Do you think you would be quite so successful, so popular, if it wasn't for the internet?
No, I made it deliberately about the internet. When I was doing Batman, and we were doing Batman, it was about the entire history of this thing that has existed since 1939. It's a cultural organism, you know. Batman is something bigger than all of us. Batman will still be here when we're all dead. So it was kind of, how do you explore that? What do you do with that? How do you relate to that? And yeah, it was absolutely about trying to engage with something bigger than all of us. Now hold it up. Shout, not shout, shout. No, absolutely. I mean, comics became mainstream in the 1980s and we were so lucky to be part of that. It's now part of the giant cultural discourse. You look at television and movies, they're all based on the nonsense that we all grew up on. You know, if you went back to the 70s, it was Dennis Potter dramas, it was about people shagging in the Forest of Dean. Now it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's like this is the material of the world we live in. And absolutely, we're so lucky. And as Scottish people, poor fucking ignorant assholes, we get the chance to actually be part of that dance.
Hi guys,
Hey.
just for welcoming us. Quick question about Batman and Robin. One of my favourite villains from that run was Professor Pig. Hoping you guys can talk a wee bit about him and that really weird, creepy kind of dance he gives Robin with all of his
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's like,
Cheers.
no, Professor Pig does a lap dance for the 12-year-old Robin. And Professor Pig, because I always thought, you know, these Batman villains are like, they're all deranged, or the Joker's this, or like Catwoman is kleptomania, you know, like the Joker. They all represent different neurodiversity, I think is the term right now. But they all represent different ways of looking at the world. And Professor Pig, we thought, let's push it as far as we can to pure schizophrenia, where he has this gigantic symbolic world in his head that makes sense to him, but it doesn't make sense to anyone else. And I think that those 2 pages you drew, let him talk for a minute, because I'm getting sick of this. He drew 2 pages where Peg is basically lap dancing young Robin, and Robin is like, you just redefined wrong.
Well, I'm ashamed to say, but obviously I had to do that lap dance to draw those pages,
and later tonight,
just tuck the notes down there. Grant wrote the piece, and when I read it, like, I was smiling and feeling guilty for smiling at what I was reading, and
we love guilt. Guilt is the greatest Scottish feeling.
But yeah, it's just about getting into the head of a character who behaves in that way.
And the idea of Batman's always up against madness, you know, it's Arkham Asylum, it's like mentally ill people, and he's a billionaire who just goes out and beats up mentally ill people every day. he's like Trump, he just beats the hell out of mentally ill men. So we kind of embraced that and made the most, and I read a lot of this, you know, schizophrenic art, schizophrenic thoughts. And that was Professor Pig. He's in the new Batman series, the Batman Gotham TV show. So apparently they brought Professor Pig in. So I hope he's wearing his mask, and I hope he does the lap dance.
He's in the Arkham game as well.
No, the Arkham Asylum game is like Professor Pig is the best thing in that whole game, which is it's one of the best Batman stories ever. That Batman Arkham Knight thing, but Professor Pig is like one of the greatest. They did it better than me.
Hi, you were talking about how Flex Mentallo was quite a personal book for the both of you, but Gerald Way's Doom Patrol brought the character back. So how do you feel about seeing that character being handled by different creative teams?
I think he should never come back, and everyone who does him gets it wrong. But I love Gerard. Gerard's my best pal, you know, it's like, you know, but I just think, leave him alone, leave Flex alone, it's us two, it's like Glasgow, it's like not American, it's like you will never understand Flex Mentallo.
Thanks very much. Is there any stories you wish you hadn't told?
Just that one I just told. No, of course not. We thought about this. We planned this. We think about it. We're smart. We wanted to tell all of the stories. There's nothing we regret. There's nothing we wish we hadn't done. Is there, Vinny?
No, there's nothing. Honestly. Even when I was drawing stuff, I didn't know what I was drawing.
You know.
Hi. Is there any rivalry between you?
No.
Don't believe it.
No, there isn't.
If we were both writers...
I've got rivalry with that. See that Mo Farah guy? I'd run the ass off him. But with him, no, there's no rivalry. We are...
No. Grant writes the stories and I draw the stories, so... If we were both writers or if we were both artists, there might be a bit of rivalry. But the fact that we're doing different parts of the same thing...
Yeah,
it's like there's no rivalry between lovers.
Ooh! Lovers. Later. You know? No, there is no... An artist and a writer, two artists, there might be rivalry, two writers, there might be rivalry, but with the artist and the writer, there is only congruence. Congruence.
Congruence.
Hello, gents.
He's changing the tone.
No,
thank goodness.
He's taking the atmosphere.
I'm from Bearsden, I can't help it. Obviously, you've written and drawn characters who have existed, as you say, decades before you, will continue to exist decades after you. I wonder what it's like when you have to give them back, knowing that someone else picks up Batman or Doom Patrol or X-Men or whoever.
Yeah.
What it's like to kind of have your additions or your changes kind of continued or not continued? What's like having to put the toys back in the box?
Honestly, it's like seeing your girlfriend fucked by a brutal sociopath. But you just have to go, okay. And moving on.
It's not like that for all of us.
But for me, it's like that. More. Oh, come on. There's millions here, come on.
Yeah. So, in Batman and Son, he gave us Damien as he is now, and then obviously in Batman and Robin with Frank, we kind of gave him the Robin role. And now he's really going on in his own. And he's, you know, he's got his series with John Kent, and he's now leading the Teen Titans. So, what does that mean to you to see what DC have done with Damien as Robin now?
We get nothing from that. We created that character, we get nothing, because he's a Batman derivative. So we get nothing, but yeah, I'm so glad. I wanted to kill that character. It was like, you know, Doctor Who, the Doctor's daughter, and they kill her in that one episode. I thought no other writer wants to deal with Batman's son. So let's do this story, this arc, and we'll make Batman's son, and it all happens, and then he dies at the end, and it's really tragic. But they loved him, the fans loved that character, and it's still happening.
Do you know, Batman's son would be like the ultimate version of me and you with a dad who overshadows us.
What?
Because imagine Batman was your dad.
I'm scared.
You could never live up to Batman if Batman was your dad.
My dad was nothing compared to me. No, okay, right.
No, because when you were growing up, your dad was much bigger than you. And
I remember seeing my, I'm sorry about this is visceral, but I saw my dad in the toilet, and he's just like, what? This thing? Like, taking a piss? What? You know?
We had a more sober household.
Yeah. He never saw his dad in the toilet.
But if you grow up thinking
you're scared,
if you grow up thinking you're in your dad's shadow, how much more would it be if you were grown up with Batman as your dad?
Awful.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Hi.
Honestly, Batman is your dad, all of you. Imagine Batman was your dad, and you've ended up here tonight.
Just an opposite from the question before about anything you wish you hadn't done. Is there any kind of almost projects throughout the years you've worked together that you wish would have happened, but for one reason or another didn't come to pass?
No, we actually did them all. We did everything we thought we would do together. So there isn't anything except for the new stuff, and we're trying to figure out what's the new brilliant thing we'll do together.
It's just the new stuff, John.
No, everything we did, I think we were on it. I think we knew what we were doing.
You know, at Marvel and DC, like the companies that are making all those great comics, which company do you think is doing better at making the comics?
DC is always the best. Huzzah! That's because you agree, you know. DC is the best. It's like, they were the first, they were the best. And Marvel is this thing that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby created. But those guys are gone now, and they were brilliant. They made this thing that lasted for 100 issues. But then came, you know, all these other men who didn't do it quite as well. But DC is both of these universes are living things. They've lasted longer than most of the lives of the people in this audience. They're going to outlast all of us. They're very, you know, they're living organisms, the DC and Marvel universes, but I will always cleave to DC because I think it's much more archetypal and mythical, and ultimately, you know, DC right now is kicking Marvel's ass, and I think it's for a good reason, it's because they're better.
Yeah, I'd like to know whether you have any childhood influences that kind of help you be creative in your adult life. If you could kind of reflect on that.
Not all of them, like my mum's sci-fi, my dad's radicalism, everything. It's all about childhood, because writing comics is like being a kid. You know, you have to stay young, you have to stay adolescent, you have to stay into that feeling of, I can change the world, I can make things different, which none of us can really do. We're all just little small fucking things in a giant organism. But comics say we can be superheroes, we can be special. The thing that you dream about, the special, bigger self, is real. And I think that's what comics allow us to do. They allow us to play out these symbolic dramas that we all live. We're all Superman in our own heads, we're all Wonder Woman. And that's it, you know. To me, that's what comics are all about. Which is no answer at all. Benny?
What about Frank?
Sorry, I was miles away.
I'm sick of it. I'm fed up talking. I don't want to shut up.
Well, I guess if you're talking about childhood influences, like obviously you were just in the Bruins on Sunday there.
Yeah, well, in terms of influence, the Bruins were huge for me because it was Dudley Watkins who was the artist that drew the Bruins when
And
I
if you
was
see
really young.
photographs of Dudley Watkins, he's hot. You know, he's like fucking, he should be the third singer in One Direction. He's this beautiful golden boy with a sweep of hair, like 1920s. Dudley Watkins was cool as fuck. I wish he was here.
That wasn't actually the attraction for me.
Weirdo!
For me, it was just about the way he drew
To
things.
me, it's all about Dudley Watkins' hair.
I'm going to Google him and see what his hair
No,
was
he's
like.
super hot. He's
okay.
so gorgeous.
It's
He's
hot.
he's brilliant. He's like a 1920s like, beautiful boy.
I'll check him out. Look
him up. I bet you guys have got computers, right? Look up Dudley Watkins right now and you'll see this handsome young 1920s hot boy.
Okay, well, hot though he was, for me as a child,
like him, hot as he is, Andy can draw.
For me as a child, it was his drawing ability that was the thing, and that's what inspired me.
I just care about his cheekbones.
I'll check out his cheekbones after this.
Yeah, so did everybody see Frank Wiley and the Bruins on Sunday there?
They made him look baldy. He's got hair, I'm bald, he's got hair. They made him look baldy.
They also made me a villain.
Here's another question.
I've seen a number of artists express frustration with the insistence on monthly grinds at the big two, and they feel the art and stories would be better served with the when it's ready approach. I was just wondering how you felt as an artist regarding the dead-on insistence on monthly releases for the big books at DC and Marvel, and the kind of swapping of artists that forces.
How do I feel about monthly schedules and swapping artists?
If the art would be better served just with a when it's ready approach.
There's not many artists who can do a monthly book. There are a few,
and they're all shite.
When it works well.
I'm only joking, guys.
But I think it's better if you've got a situation like in France where you give an artist a story, they draw it to their own satisfaction and hand it back to the publisher when they're happy with it, and then it's published. That to me makes sense. The American model of we scheduled this for 4 weeks hence and you've got 8 months work to do, so it's going to run really, really late. That doesn't work for me. So there's on the one hand there's a balance that you could find between those two, but for me it's much more like give an artist a good story, let them do their best work on it, release it when it's finished. for me, that seems like the most obvious way of doing it.
So, okay, we've got a couple of questions at the back here.
I don't know if you've done work on it already, but would you ever like do a comic on Nightwing?
Nightwing?
No. No, I've done a bit of Nightwing, and yeah, I love that Dick Grayson character. We did him in Batman, and I think he was better as the successor to Batman. I think Dick Grayson is a brilliant character. It's like great. He goes back to the very early days of comics, but not Nightwing. He should be Batman. He should grow up. I wish we had got to do 5 years of that Batman and Robin with Grayson and Damian. I think it was better than Bruce Wayne Batman. But we got our asses kicked, and now it's all back to the same old thing.
I'm just the same as him, really. I'm not sure if you've done this already, but would you ever work on a DC film, like the Batman film's coming out?
No, they'll never ask me. You know? I'm working on other stuff. I'm working on my own stuff. It's like, but they do use their stuff. You know, you saw the last Batman Superman thing. It was like what's his name? What's that guy? Ben Affleck dressed up as Damian with his trench coat and he's fighting Apocalypse. And so they use our stuff, but we don't get anything from that. So it's much better to create your own things and do your own things.
Another question back here.
Hi Grant, what did you think of the new 52 relaunch, and did it fuck up DC's entire history?
No, I haven't. Honestly, I haven't. What was that word?
Alex.
No, I haven't even seen any of it. They stopped sending me boxes. I used to get boxes of all the comics, and then they stopped sending it, so I have no idea what's going on. Apparently there's some guy from the CIA writing Batman or something. I have no idea. So actually I don't know. I'm sure it's brilliant.
Another question?
You've obviously worked together a lot. Do you feel that you've developed a connection over the years, or was that something that was always there?
Yeah, it's almost sexual. Almost, but only almost. You know,
That's why it works.
Because it's like moonlighting. If we actually went through with it, it'd be over.
Okay, there's another Facebook question, if that's all right. This is from Marty McClement. I know there's a bit of history with
Isn't
rebellion.
she #1 in the charts right now?
I know there's a bit of history with rebellion, but if you were asked to do another Zenith story for 2000 AD, would you, and how do you think the character would fit?
No. I know they've actually got it. Stevie O did a new Zenith drawing, and it's great, but the Zenith would now be like 56 or something. It's like, they can't do that. He's an old man, he's an old ruin.
Okay, no question.
Like me.
Hold on. I have been wanting to make this question since I read Animal Man when I was 15. In Chile it was very hard to find any animal comic, and I managed to get it. So, which are your literally, or which books have influenced you in the way that you understand the comic mythos? Because when I read Animal Man, I thought in Pirandello, and then in Doom Patrol you use Dadaism, and then Unamuno, for example, is my writer. And which books have influenced you in the way you understand mythos in comics?
I just like Borges, and you know, it's just anything that is about the imagination, about the free play of imagination. So there's a lot of stuff influenced me. Animal Man specifically was influenced by 1960s comic books, where the artists and writers like John Broome or Len Wein or Steve Englehart would find themselves trapped inside the stories of the superheroes. And I loved the idea of what's the connection between the people who create these things and the actual stories which outlive us. So yeah, I mean, the influences were all about, I guess, you know, for me in the 80s it was like Borges, it was like Tommaso Landolfi, it was all that European magic realist kind of work, which acknowledged the fact that you were writing a fantasy. It's not real. It's a universe. The DC universe is real. It exists for 70 years. It will persist beyond our lives. But to join in with that, to do work with that, I was looking at kind of artists and writers who were dealing with the notion of the creator as part of the work. And I thought that was really important, like, that there's no way to extricate the creator from the work. And especially if you're doing something like Batman or Superman, how come I can influence Superman's thinking just by my experiences, by Vin's experiences? How can we suddenly influence Superman to the point where we reinvigorate it with our real lives? You know, Superman, my father died, so I wrote issues 5, 6, I think it was, which is about my father dying. So, you know, it's just all about being influenced by writers who implicated the work. You know, what we're doing, it's not real, but it is real. You know, our Superman, All-Star Superman 10, we saved kids' lives because we had Superman saving a suicide victim, a young goth kid. You don't even know if she's a girl or a boy, but Superman saves her. And that actually saved real lives, and that's what Superman is supposed to do, is to save lives. He's a fiction who saves lives. And he's not real, and he'll never be real, and the more you attempt to make it real, the less you get to the core of the idea. So, I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but it's, you know, we want to make things real. We want to bring our real lives into these characters who persist beyond us. And the more real we can make them, the more honest we can be about the fact that they're not. You know, they're not us, but they can tell us. They're symbols of how we feel.
Okay, now a question. I was really interested in like what part like the occult and magic and stuff plays, and like things like what's in, obviously like Arkham Asylum and stuff like that. I was like really interested in how that kind of affects the book.
No, for me, I mean, as you know, I'm a practicing occultist, whatever that means, and a practicing magician. But yes, it's major. It's all the symbolism, it's all the colours, the meanings. Everything has to tie into something. But I don't think it's magic. I think it's just about here's how the world works. You know, we live in a holographic universe where every single piece of it reflects the giant scale of it. You know, galaxies swirl in the same Coriolis spiral as the water in your plug hole. You know, you can tune your TV to a station where it's nothing but snow, and you're hearing the Big Bang, you're hearing static from the Big Bang. We're all part of a giant system. And if our work can somehow reflect that system, if we can just plug into that, if we can somehow do work that reflects that, that embodies that, that acknowledges that, then I think we're all tied into something we all understand, all of us. You know, no matter how cosmic or weird it is, it affects our lives, it affects how we are and who we are. And all we're trying to do is, yeah, the work is occult. But occult is just a pattern system, it's just a way of applying a grid to the universe that allows it to make sense. And that's what the work is trying to do.
So, following on directly from what you've just said there, is there anything that you've done that, or is there anything that you've not done because you were worried, well, that might actually happen? Or is there anything that you've made that you've then looked at and gone, oh, that has actually happened?
Oh, it's too late. You think, look at that X-Men thing we did. Right, a month before 9/11, we had a sequence where a plane forms itself into a giant fist and punches through a building. We had the Beast, the next issue of X-Men, crying, he's digging up skeletons from a destroyed city. That happened the exact month of 9/11. You know, how did we know that? How did we know to talk about that? And at the same time, it wasn't just us, it was like Garth Ennis had a plane crashing into 2 towers. There was so many echoes, forward, backward echoes of that moment. So something is going on, but all we're trying to do is make sense of it. We tried to make sense of it in the X-Men. The Beast is holding up a skeleton. It's like, you know, Jean Grey is digging up bodies from the ruins. But it was 9/11, and it was before it happened. You So how do we know? Is there some backwards echo of events? Is there something that artists get? I have no idea, but we were exactly plugged into that at the time.
Hi.
Hey.
So, with there now sort of being a massive big studio built in Scotland now for creative industries and media and everything like that, how much would you love to see your own independent works be translated into like TV sort of shows and films like that? Because TV shows have sort of been rising up in terms of like, you've got your Netflixes, Daredevil, Feathers, and The Flash on Arrow and everything like that. Would you love to see your work be translated into that medium?
Well, I'm already doing stuff with television, with the creative woodwork. So yeah, of course. Why not? But it is only a translation. The comic is better. A comic is better than a TV show. A comic is much cooler. You hold a comic, you interact with it, you touch it. It's a sexual, really. But think about it, honestly. You touch the pages. You don't touch your TV when you watch the TV. You don't interact with it in that tactile way. But a comic, you're right in there. You're with it. And the comic is like it has visual component, it has a written component, so it's actually appealing to the right and the left brain simultaneously. So it activates the full human brain. There's a holographic experience that happens with comics. How do those drawn pages, those ink lines, actually have emotional resonance? How does that happen? What the fuck is that? But it does, doesn't it? You can read even a crudely drawn comic, if it's really well done, you will feel an emotion. But it's not, it doesn't exist. It's like these aren't real things, but they are. So it's kind of, to me, the comic is better than most other media because we have an intimate, very tactile connection with it.
Okay, here's a question from Facebook for Frank. Frank, as such a phenomenal colorist too, is there any reason why you don't color more of your own work? Is it deadline issues?
Time.
Yeah, I colour my covers because I can take the time to do that, but I can't colour the interiors because it takes too long and I'm slow enough as it is. That's the short answer. You want the long one? The long one is that occasionally I colour the interior pages as well. I did it in a Neil Gaiman short story for Sandman, and the big crazy thing I've been talking to with Grant about, I may colour some of that, and the short stories that I've written that I want to do myself, I'll colour myself.
We also, the idea we had was to do a comic like a band, like where somebody plays lead guitar and somebody plays bass, and so Vinny was lead guitar, and some other artist was bass, and some other artist was drums. I think there's something in it, and we're kind of trying to work towards like a band, a super group. Imagine Paul and Oates teamed up with the KLF.
Okay, another question here.
Hello Grant and hello Vince. I think this question probably applies to both of you, thinking about in terms of comics. A lot of people say that comics are kind of like our world's mythology, that we, back Greeks and Romans had their version, and the Vikings and so on, and we're kind of left bereft, so we've got superheroes and so on instead. So if you accept that, what my question's really about is the art. I'm thinking, going through the art school systems where it's all kind of like a concept is king, and it's all about Damien Hirst getting other people to make his work for him and all the rest of it. In a couple of 100 years' time, do you reckon that the best examples of artwork that we've actually got is figurative, realistic representations of the world that we live in is actually going to be
in 100 years' time, no one will remember Damien Hirst, but they will remember David Hockney. Hirst will be forgotten, Hockney will be remembered. So that's it. And that's representative, it's like, it's conceptual, it's like, Hirst is like a circus act, and he's great, but it's a circus act.
Okay, bad example, but in other words, would comic art would maybe be looked at as the legitimate fine art of our generation right now?
Yeah, probably, because people get stupider. And they'll look at the Beano and think, whoa, this is like the Sistine Chapel. You know, Dennis the fucking Menace. Because people will get stupider. Or will they?
Hi there, question for you, thanks. So I think this might be like a kind of double-pronged question. Like,
I like double-pronged.
So like, well, obviously like, Grant yourself, you talk a lot about unity consciousness and how we're all one big kind of system. And you see nowadays, like the internet, I've observed as kind of like a similar beast where we're all starting to fuse together our consciousness online, almost like that is like imitating the real life unity consciousness that exists.
No, absolutely, yeah.
So with that in mind, talking about like being superheroes and things like that, we are now at a unique stage with the information age that we can all become our own like versions of superheroes where we can learn all these different things and become practicing magicians, all that, and empower ourselves. So with that in mind, I suppose my question is...
Get it!
What would you think the world would be like if we all became practicing musicians?
Brilliant, it would be great, it would be great, so fucking all you do tonight, you know? Because it's all you, it's not my fault. It's like, it would be great. We all have to be practicing magicians, we have to put out our heads, we have to connect, we have to make a bigger thing. And of course, yeah, it's all linking up. We're seeing it right now. There's almost 8 billion people on the planet. Most of them are superfluous. But the internet is allowing us to connect. It's connecting, it's like neural connections, it's like the brain. Something is happening. And it's happening bigger than all our lifetimes. It's happening beyond anything we could imagine. It's not, none of us are the Messiah, none of us are the one. But we're all part of something that's clearly going on. You know, I think we're reaching maximum population, but the maximum population is deliberately designed to create the intensity of the neural connections in the brain. The internet will connect us all. Suddenly we all become one thing. We'll eventually recognise ourselves as one living entity, which goes right back to the mitochondrial cell 3.5 billion years ago, which is still dividing in every one of our bodies. Every single person here is carrying the same mother cell. It keeps dividing for 3.5 billion years. What does she think? Says man.
Question over here.
How you doing? What's happening, Grantman?
What?
Not here.
Don't ask me, I'm drunk.
Can you tell us a story about a time you've used magic recently and it's worked for you?
No, I can't actually tell you that story.
No? Can you tell us about the...
No, it's super worked on.
Can you tell us
I
about
can't tell you, it's compromising.
Can you tell us about the Jared Leto phone call before Suicide Squad?
Well, he was great. He's a nice guy. He called me up and asked me about the Joker, and I talked him through, and I said the Joker should be like Bowie, because I think the Joker is like the European answer to Batman's American can-do. You know, Batman is the ultimate self-made billionaire. He is Trump. He's like Trump as a good guy, which is, I know it's hard to imagine, but imagine Trump and it's Bruce Wayne, and suddenly this guy is like, okay, I'm going to use all this money to make the world better. So, to me, I was kind of trying to explore Bruce Wayne as the potential of a billionaire who loved us all and who was willing to spend his money on making things better. But tell me that question again, because I'm losing the thread. Say it again. That was a good question. Say it again. Oh, another guy.
Thanks for coming. You're both obviously really driven people. Why did you then decide to spend your life doing comics? Why not make a band? Why not get into architecture or
So we've done that. I've been in the band. I'm sure But comics are, it's so free. There's no editorial, there's no control. I work in TV and it's like there's 1,000 people have notes and ideas. In a comic you can get your artistic ideas out onto the page immediately, and there's so little interference in that process.
It's pure. Yeah. It's pure.
You've seen it's like poetry. So we're getting away with what Byron and Shelley did in the 18th century.
Yeah. I've worked in advertising. I've worked in animation. Working in comics, as Grant says, it's just like you either have an idea yourself or you share an idea with somebody else, and together you put that idea out. You try and do that in an animation company, you've got 400 other people that need to play a part in it. You try and make a movie, you know, it's the purity of it. It's just the fact that what your idea is goes from you to the person who's receiving it in a very direct way that doesn't happen in most other media.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, doing comics is like being Coleridge or Morrison. We get away with everything. There is no editorial constraint.
Did you feel you had that kind of freedom when you were doing the big 2 books?
Yeah, even with that, yeah.
Right, I've got a question for both of you. It's about process. Grant, do you outline your story or you just rip into it and dive in with a full script?
No, I'm super structural. I build it on a structure. I've always got a structure. So it's quite mathematical, even though I'm not very mathematical myself. But yeah, the stories are really built. They're constructed. And then you get the artist coming in and adding something to that.
Then do you have a unique process, or you pretty much break down the script into storyboarded? And
my process isn't unique at all. But it's what the majority of good comic artists do, and it's what all comic artists should do. You read and reread the story until you totally get it, and you read and reread what the writer's asking you to do in the script. And you do your very, very best to bring that to life, and you think everything's through so that the reader doesn't have to think it. It's just all there for them. It's always the same process.
When you did that New Gods thing with Len Wein, because Len just died last week, he was my biggest influence in comics. That guy was my hero, you know, and if you look at all my stuff, it all goes back to Len Wein stories, the Justice League, Seven Soldiers, it's all influenced by Len. But you did that New Gods with him, which is great, and it's like, what did you...
That was a really unusual thing for me, because every single thing I've ever worked on in comics has been from full script. And full script, for those of you who don't know, is when the writer writes, it's an 8-page story and they give you page 1, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4. And there's another way of writing scripts, which is called the Marvel way. And the writer tells the story and suggests the number of pages it should take to make the story, and you kind of...
Does that one Grant do that?
No. Well, not with me. Len Wein was the only writer I've worked with that's given me a Marvel script. It's the only one time I've had that experience. And when I got the script at first, I thought, wow, this is really vague, and I just, what I do with Grant scripts, what I do with any of the scripts, I just read it and reread it until I really got the story, and then I just put it all together and made sure it worked, and you know, so it actually worked for me, and I actually really enjoyed the process of working on that kind of script. But unlike Grant, I didn't know a lot of Len's stuff beforehand. I just treated it as a writer I hadn't worked with before, and I liked the story and I liked what he was trying to say. But the way he was translating it to me, not to the reader, was totally different from what I was used to, and I just kind of worked with it. But it worked out well in the end. But yeah, I didn't have that background with Len that you've got.
Okay, we've got like 5 minutes left, and I know like 3-4 people have kind of caught my eye already, so we'll just go through those 4. And then
In what way?
This is a question about when you start a story, like how do you approach it and what comes first? The reason I ask is a lot of your storylines, I don't want to say twists, but they have big lateral changes halfway through them. And I've always wondered, when you approach a story, does that at the front of the story and that's when you sort of work backwards, or you start with a character and you work forwards towards that?
No, to me it's always structure. It's like, what's this story about? Is it a quest? Is it a romance? If it's a romance, then go back to Romeo and Juliet, go back to, people have been telling stories for thousands of years and they're all the same stories. There's like 7 different plots. So to understand exactly what you're telling is important. Is, like I say, is it a quest? Is it a romance? Is it a, there's 7 of these, I can't remember the rest. But yeah, but basically, to find the structure of the story and then build it out from that. I know other writers, like Neil Gaiman, will start from character and just let the characters proceed and see what happens. But to me, it's always the structure, it's always the big picture, it's the high altitude view, and then going down closer and closer to what's happening within that archetypal thing.
That's funny that you say that, because I always think your main strength is when you're concentrating on the detail of character,
yeah,
and the detail of situation, when you're right in there, close.
That's the microscopic taking on, but it has to be, what is this story? Is it the Iliad? Is it Romeo and Juliet? Is it King Lear? Is it, it's always, because all the stories have been told, so if you at least if you can plug into a particular structure, then everyone understands it. We've all read these stories, we're all familiar with them, we've seen them in 1,000 soap operas, 1,000 plays, 1,000, and so we get it. So if you can apply yourself to that story, and then everything just zooms down to, so how does Superman fit in?
Right, hi guys.
Hey,
so I recently found out that Grant went to my primary school.
Right, you went to Moss Park?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I've just left it now, but yeah.
Well, you just come out of Moss Park Primary, what are you, 12?
Yeah.
They used to have a great library.
So basically from that I was wondering, from both these, whether primary school and high school, like, if it shaped any of your work and if it inspired anything.
Yeah, I think of course, but I hated school. I hated primary school. It was just like, I had good friends, but it was so constricted and controlled. I hated it. And high school, I went to Allen Glens, which was a prestigious boys' school up the road there, and it was just nuts. We were out of control. There was no girls in the school, so all the libido that we felt was channeled into destruction. And it was like, that film If anybody's seen Lindsay Anderson's If, so we had the same tie as the boys from If, and we thought that was super cool. So in the 70s I wore this school uniform, and it made me cool, because if I'd worn flares and denims and all that, I'd have been terribly uncool. But the school uniform was the coolest thing on earth. And all we did was, we'd send teachers to the mental home. We used to, every lunchtime we'd go down and we'd get compasses, and we'd go up to the top floor in Lewis's and just go down and rip clothes up. We'd destroy everything. We'd wear women's hats and women's skirts, and they'd call the headmaster and say, there's a bunch of Allen Glens boys just come in and destroyed our entire school. It was awful. School was awful, but yeah, I think ultimately everything is about those years. Everything is about that, everything's about those feelings, everything's about that adolescent. The trouble with writing comics is that you never grow up. I feel like a teenager. It's wrong, I'm a 90-year-old man, whatever. And it's like, I still feel like an angry 15-year-old, which is retarded.
Finny! What about Frank?
Well, I'm more mature than Grant, so I feel like an angry 17-year-old.
He's got a family, I've just got a family of thoughts.
No, there's loads of stuff that comes from your school days and your childhood and your family upbringing and your community.
We this guy, we this gym teacher called Daddy Hart.
Oh,
the boys called him Daddy Hart. His name was Ian Hart or something. But he used to come in, so all the boys, he would line them up and he would pull your trunks open and look down and just say, "You were not wearing regulation pants." And he would check out every boy's like balls. And he would make us shower naked, and all the boys were really embarrassed. And you'd be in you'd go to no, honestly, you'd go to the swimming pool, and there'd be 2 boys to a cubicle, but there was 40 cubicles. It was easily, you could have had 1 boy to a cubicle. He would always put 2 boys in a cubicle, so you'd be in with your best mate, right? And you'd bend over, and you'd just brush his buttocks. Oh, fuck, sorry, mate. And that was Daddy Hart, that was school, it was obscene, it was insane. But yeah, of course, it inspires everything.
I went to a state comprehensive and it wasn't as exciting as that.
He missed out on the buttocks, he's like, sorry. Because the cubicles were so small.
For me, it was just fancy girls that weren't interested in me.
Girls? We didn't have girls.
I know.
We just had hot boys.
Okay, there's 2 more questions left.
Creating is such a personal thing. Do you ever mourn that private connection when you put your work into the world?
No, I think the private connection remains, you know, but you're handing it out. And sometimes people hate it and sometimes they love it. I think we'd be lucky that people kind of like what we do, and it encourages you to do more, you know. But no, it's always difficult. It's always to say what you feel and to try and find a medium through which you're allowed to say that, using symbols or metaphors, is always.
But you get that thing where you sometimes meet people, and when they talk about the connection they had to the thing you wrote, the thing you drew, you know that it's very close to what it was that you were putting down there on the page.
Because we all
that's
feel,
very
ultimately
satisfying.
we all feel the same. We're quite simple, you know. Humans are quite simple. We all feel the same things, and we've all felt them for thousands of years. It's why Shakespeare is still cool, because he identified that, you know. So I think we all feel the same things, and if you're really honest about your experience, you will obviously connect with people. To not be honest is to not connect. I thought that microphone was a growth. I was like, what the hell? what's happened to Frank Whiteley? He's got a growth.
Still I look good.
Okay, is this the last question potentially?
Alright guys, this is a very quick question for Grant. It's one I'm sure you've been asked about a few times already before, and that is, when can we expect to see the end of Sea Guy?
Honestly, I sent in that's my best ever thing I've ever done, right? Cameron Stewart's had the script for like 3 years and he's done nothing with it. So please, start a petition. You know, bug him, send to his email, find him and haunt him, because it's the best thing I've ever done. The Last BBC Guy is the greatest expression of what it is to be human I've ever created. So Cameron Stewart's just sitting on it. I don't know why. He seems to think that it's like Chuck Palahniuk's more important than me.
Okay, well let's get one last question for both Grant and Frank. Who's got one good question that hasn't asked one before? Got to be confident with this one.
Who's the best kisser?
Obviously you guys produce work together that's exceptional, and do you think that working alongside each other emboldens you to tell a story that you otherwise wouldn't?
Yeah, because honestly he gets my head like no one else does, and that's the thing. It's like absolutely emboldens. Everything we've done has been different, it's been a new take, it's been a new way to do things, and I always know that he has the capacity anything I think of, he will do it better than I thought of.
We do definitely have some sort of synergy or something. But, you know, I get Grant scripts and without fail, they always strike a chord with me, like on a very, very personal level. And every single writer I've worked with, every single script I've got, I've read it and reread it and tried to find out what it was the writer wanted me to draw and really give what it was they were looking for. But when I work with Grant, it's a different thing, you know? And it's
just as
easier.
I'm honest, I've worked with lots of great artists, he's the best. It's like, that's it.
That's how you get an exhibition in Kelvingrove.
Yeah. And not one word about Donald Trump.
Okay, so I just want to, everybody have a big thank you and a round of applause for Frank Morrison.
Thanks for coming,
We're going to go down to the exhibition and get to the signing table.
Yeah, signing.
Yeah, so you guys want to go and get set up, I'll just tell you guys what's going to
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay.